This video is going to be a little different. No cryptids in this video, but it's a very, very exciting story. I want to read to you a few paragraphs from one of my favorite books of all time. The title of the book is called White Hunters, The Golden Age of African Safaris. The author's name is Brian Hearn, and I'll drop a link below in the description so that you can find this book on Amazon. If you're a guy, you'll love this book. It really is great. I've read it twice. I listen to it on Audible from time to time. And I was reading it this morning and I thought, this is such a good few paragraphs that I thought I'd share it with you all. So here we go. The short, mysterious life of Fritz Schindelar. Not much is known about Fritz Schindelar's life before he arrived in British East Africa, and even the date of his arrival is uncertain. It is thought by some historians that Schindelar arrived in 1906. What is known for certain about Schindelar is that he was not what he claimed to be when he turned up in Nairobi. The tall, rangy stranger said he was a head waiter and a hotel baggage porter, but in fact he was almost certainly an aristocrat. After his death, a rare photograph was discovered among Schindelar's things that showed him as a youth in the uniform of a commander of a crack regiment of Hungarian hussars. For a man as young as this to be in command of such an elite corps is a fact that argues he was of royal blood. People who got to know easygoing Schindelar in East Africa quickly realized that here was no ordinary person. He was an absolutely outstanding rifle shot, no matter whether the target was stationary or moving, coming or going. With a heavy rifle, Fritz once shattered half a dozen roof tiles torn off a building on Government Road and thrown into the air by a willing accomplice. And he was a magnificent horseman, a trick rider who could gallop his horse as he stood in the saddle. Schindelar was reckoned to be the best polo player in the colony, which is saying something in a horse-crazy society such as Nairobi. Herbert "Pop" Binks, Nairobi's first professional photographer, once watched in fascination as Fritz casually tossed a 240-pound sack of oats onto a wagon as if it were no more than a box of toffees. Schindelar had expensive tastes. He knew good food, wine, and clothes. He was articulate and perfectly at ease in the company of just about anybody, whatever their social standing. A widely believed rumor was that Schindelar had hurriedly left Europe over some scandal involving a woman. But in Africa, most people, men and women, liked Fritz and admired him enormously. Within a few years, he was among the best known of the white hunters. It was said of him that there was nothing he would not do for a safari client. No risk was ever too much for him. No situation was so difficult or dangerous that he would not tackle it. J.A. Hunter remembered that Fritz loved to gamble, and he could often be seen at the Norfolk Hotel with several hundred gold sovereigns laying on the table before him. Numerous events fueled talk and speculation that Fritz Schindelar had utter contempt for danger or death. An example of his behavior took place during one of Schindelar's safaris when his clients were Mr. Barclay, the owner of a bank, and his two pretty daughters. An irate rhino chased the eldest girl and put her up a tree. She screamed for Fritz, who galloped up on his swift white Arab mare, dismounted, sent his horse on its way, and then played tag with the infuriated beast around the trunk of a tree before shooting it. On another occasion, he threw bottles at an angry lion that had been wounded by a client in an effort to make it charge. J.A. Hunter observed Fritz did many curious things that would require a psychologist to explain. A light side to Schindelar was often apparent, and he was invariably in good humor. The hunter, elegantly dressed in city clothes, was a favorite with the African staff at the Norfolk Hotel. He amused them highly when he would walk around in an exaggerated fashion and serve customers as if he were a hotel employee. Photographer Pop Binks was in his Nairobi studio on a fateful day in 1914 when the American Paul Rainey entered the premises. Rainey and his cowboys were the first Americans Pop Binks had ever met, and to him they were memorable characters. Binks wrote, "A great big slab of a fellow walked into my photography shop and introduced himself. He could see that I was taken back by his size. 'I know I'm a hunk of a guy,' he said. 'There's 6 feet 4 inches of Paul Rainey.' I looked him up and down and agreed with him. 'There is a lot of you.' 'Well, I'm 5 foot 8 inch Pop Binks. Can I do something for you?' 'You can,' replied Rainey. 'You can come on my safari and take pictures. We're going up Gilgil way for lion.' Rainey provided the movie cameras, which he hauled out of a rickshaw and demonstrated to Binks. 'Here's the book of words and here's the pump,' Rainey instructed. 'The cameras are driven by compressed air. You will have to fill the air container, which supplies enough power to run 30 feet of film.' Binks asked, 'And what if she runs out of air when the lion is charging?' And Rainey replied, 'Why, you throw the camera at the lion and get the hell out of it.' I could see Paul was a man I would enjoy working for," Binks said. "Undoubtedly, they were great showmen. In fact, they were great big boys. No gloomy creases defigured their brows. Everything was play." To Rainey, the novel idea of riding lions after the manner of a fox hunt was irresistible. Binks immediately accepted the job offer, but not without considerable misgivings, for he well knew from past experience the risks of fooling with lions. Rainey still needed the expertise of a white hunter to set up spectacular charging lion photos. The white hunters Alan Black and George Outram, and the lion-hunting cousins Clifford and Harold Hill, had all turned him down, saying Rainey's proposal was far too dangerous and could only end in disaster. It was then that Rainey recalled the name of Fritz Schindelar, and he went looking for him. Schindelar met his soulmate in Paul Rainey. He was immediately drawn to Rainey and the dangerous challenge of his proposals, and became Paul's white hunter. When Clifford Hill heard about the arrangement, he said to Fritz in his usual quiet way, "Dangerous work, Fritz." Schindelar replied, grinning, "For what Paul's willing to pay, it's worth the chance." Pop Binks observed, although riding lions with his fleet-footed Arab polo pony was something Schindelar had done many times over, the trick this time was not simply to kill the lion, but to ride it and then get it to charge not a horseman, but a cameraman. The safari party set off for Rainey's comfortable Naivasha ranch 80 miles west of Nairobi, where Rainey kept a small menagerie for his filmmaking, including a pampered tame chimpanzee named Dooley. The chimp had been measured for a suit of safari clothes at Ahmed Brothers in Nairobi, and he was sometimes seen smoking a cigarette, lounging in Rainey's Ford car. As chimpanzees were unknown in this part of Africa, Dooley's antics in small towns drew large crowds of African onlookers who were always doubled over with laughter. The Swahili name for chimpanzee is Soko Mutu, forest person. Just the same, the crowds kept a respectable distance from Dooley, the forest person, who occasionally gazed absently in their direction as he blew smoke rings, well aware that he was something of a sensation. At the ranch, Rainey kept his pack of bear dogs and fighting dogs. A sizable group of friends assembled for the hunt. A rancher called Boy Long, who had for 15 years been Delamere's Soisambu estate manager, Al Klein, the American white hunter, who was along for the ride, as well as Rainey's American cowboys, cameraman, Somali Sais, several first-class African gun-bearers, Schindelar, and Pop Binks. The entire region was still crawling with lions in 1914. Land around the Great Rift Valley lakes of Naivasha, Nakuru, and Elementita was being opened up for ranches and farms. In addition to ranchers who hunted lions in defense of stock, 3 game rangers, Blaney Percival, and Messrs. Woodhouse and Woodstham frequently shot lions in an effort to thin out the population. For this reason, some Navasha lions knew all about hunting and had heated temperaments to match. In just 15 days hunting with Schindler, Rainey's party killed 11 lions, but they had not yet managed to film a charging lion. When a lion did charge, the cameraman had been out of range or there was no time to set up the big tripods before the lion was in full rush, and Schindler or Rainey had to shoot in self-defense. On the 16th day, Rainey, Schindler, and the hunting party set up camp some distance from Rainey's ranch. The country southeast of Lake Navasha is rough. Much of the terrain is black volcanic rubble, broken with open grasslands and dense thickets of bluish-leafed bush known by its Maasai name, Laleshwa. At Rainey's new camp beneath Mount Longonot, a stark 9,000-foot cone of an extinct volcano, Pop Binks left the safari on the 8th of January 1914 and returned to Nairobi on the train to develop the film at his Victoria Street darkroom. The following day, Schindler, Rainey, and the hunting party set out in search of another lion. The hunters made for Ngaswa Gorge, a rocky defile where a lion was seen at the mouth of the chasm. In moments, the hounds were on the heels of a huge and very alert maned lion. This lion had very likely been hunted before, perhaps by the game department, for he wasted no time putting distance between himself and his pursuers. Instead of holing up in the gorge, the cat raced towards Mount Longonot, headed for the cover of a broad expanse of Laleshwa brush. Fritz Schindler spurred his horse, trying to cut the lion off as he galloped over a low ridge of hills, but the going was hard, and by then the party had split up. Rainey and Klein were on one side while Fritz paused on a ridge to check the lion as the others caught up with him. The hounds were still after the lion, but Schindler observed that now and then the maddened lion would spin about and go after the dog pack, scattering them in all directions. Then the chase would resume. Schindler knew this lion was different than any they had so far encountered. He was sure the lion would die fighting, and they would get the long-sought charging photos. The hunters followed Fritz as they rode into the valley, led on by the barking dogs, which by then had the lion bayed in the dense Laleshwa. Near the thickets, Rainey dismounted and set up the camera tripods 20 yards from the edge of the brush, while all hell broke out with the bark of the dogs and the growls of the aroused lion, still well hidden in the Laleshwa. At this point, the problem was how to get the lion to break cover and charge. Fritz told Rainey he would try to find an opening in the Laleshwa and ride into it and draw the lion out after him. Schindler galloped his white polo pony right to the edge of the brush, wheeled and sped away, but the lion would not be drawn. Fritz came back warily towards where the lion lay hidden, ready to try again, but this time he went at the brush from a different angle, hoping to get the lion to charge the cameras. There was no warning when the lion made his move. The big cat broke cover in a long bound as Schindler wheeled his Arab to escape the ferocious rush. But Schindler was too close and the lion was on top of him. The impact of the lion's charge almost bowled the pony over, and the attack threw Schindler out of the saddle. He landed on his feet, crouching as he faced the lion with his big double rifle in his hands. In a moment, the lion went for him as Fritz calmly fired into the open jaws at near point-blank range. The lion knocked Fritz down and in seconds was straddling him, tearing out his stomach with its teeth. Just as quickly, the lion left Fritz and charged the rest of the party as they opened up with a barrage of shots. The lion fell to their bullets as Rainey and his men rushed to Schindler's aid. Fritz rolled in the dust in agony as a solution of permanganate of potash crystals was dissolved in water and squirted into the gaping stomach wounds and torn bowels. Rainey's men bandaged Fritz while a makeshift stretcher was made from saddle blankets. They immediately carried Schindler towards camp while Rainey mounted his horse and raced back to get the car and head for Navasha railway station, where he ordered a special train via telegraph. In the tiny town, Rainey found a traveling doctor at the Rift Valley Hotel. The two got Fritz to the train late that evening as they set out on the 6-hour journey up the eastern wall of the Great Rift Valley to the Scott Sanatorium in Nairobi. The next day, Pop Binks visited Fritz in the hospital. Pop says Fritz kept moaning, "My God, what a blow." Fritz Schindler died in excruciating pain 2 days after he was mauled. Game Ranger Blaney Percival officially investigated Schindler's death. He said Fritz's condition was hopeless right after the attack because the abdomen had been ripped apart. Percival added, "Fritz Schindler was one of the most daring men I ever met where game was concerned. It was always a marvel to me that he escaped accident so long." Mysterious Fritz, an Austrian or perhaps Swiss or Hungarian, the nobleman, cavalry officer, and ice-cool shot who was a master of the heavy double-barrel rifle, so good with it nobody ever remembered seeing him miss anything, had somehow missed a lion at a range of a few feet.